The Winnipeg Jets are making a last-minute playoff push, but do they have what it takes to get across the finish line? Harrison Lee of Locked On Winnipeg Jets joins us to discuss their playoff chances next on today's Locked On NHL Podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here. Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, Harrison Lee. And Harrison, people left this team for dead about a month ago, and they're making an effort. They are closing in on potentially a wild card spot as the season winds down. What's been the biggest reason for this late push?
Well, I mean, the team has moved around some parts. The trade deadline was probably, look, I don't want to name names, but we had a couple of big defenders who unfortunately didn't do the defending part. And the Jets kind of spent a lot of time in their own zone when those two were out there, which they were on the same pairing. So basically you had 2D pairings, and the third was a boat anchor. So now that the Jets have kind of cut bait and you have more young rookies in the lineup, Brad Lambert's been playing some really solid games. Isak Rosén came over from Buffalo. They're not scoring a ton, but it's just a change of pace. Team's faster, team's younger. And so, I mean, the team looks a little more like some people probably expected them to at the start of the season. But honestly, just not being a billion years old has probably been one of the bigger changes.
How about a healthy Connor Hellebuck? How much does that impact this team?
Ordinarily, I'd say a lot. He's kind of not been that great. The past couple months, really since the Olympics, he's very up and down. Like some games, in Colorado, he had a couple of big wins. Honestly, I think he just traumatized McKinnon, Makar, and Taves to the point where like they see him and they just kind of freeze up. And that's probably how we beat Colorado. But otherwise it's been, I don't know, he looks human. And it's not all on him. Obviously, this team is just kind of, they're in, 26 for a reason. So 26 or 27th, depending on where they finish tonight. But yeah, I mean, this is probably the first year in a while where Hellebuck is not playing at a Vezina level. So it's interesting. Post-surgery, we didn't really know what he'd look like. He looked okay. Certainly for Team USA, he was great, but I don't know. There's some funky stuff with him, and I'm starting to wonder about his long-term future with the Jets. So
that is a big question. Talk to me about Gabriel Vilardi, because he doesn't get a lot of national attention, but he has been very productive for the Jets this year.
Yeah, so the Winnipeg Jets top line almost never gets broken up. We know that Connor and Scheifele play together, but Vilardi is usually the guy who does get swapped. For some reason, the Jets basically just trade him and Al Iafallo every other game. It's bizarre. I've never seen a team do this, but Gabe himself has been doing really well. He's played alongside Adam Lowry and Cole Perfetti recently, and Perfetti has probably been one of the biggest beneficiaries of having somebody who doesn't have loaves of bread for hands. Vilardi has really, he set, I think, a career high in points. He's been really healthy, which is a huge thing for him. Vilardi actually years ago was a prospect I was really into, and when the Kings got him, I was a little bummed. And then I thought he was not going to make the league just because his back was pretty messed up. But, here he is dropping 60, 70 points. He's been a really steady performer, and he just has some really sick mitts below the goal line. So for a guy who's really gone through the ringer, it's nice to see him do well, and he's on a great value contract.
Can this team get their special teams to be at least average?
No. I think Ehlers, right? So Ehlers, everyone talks about his 5v5 offense, which is absolutely true. The dude's a monster at even strength. But where I think people really underestimated his impact was the power play. Last year, the Jets had the best power play because Ehlers played a rotating floater role that could kind of drift between the face-off circles and around the perimeter. And he drew a ton of attention that way and opened up a lot of the other players like Velarde to attack below the goal line and stuff. Now that you don't have that dynamic skating element on this unit, the Jets' power play has actually really ground to a halt. It's been worse than I thought it would be. There should still be enough talent on this team to have at least one really good unit. I will say the second power play unit, since Brad Lambert and some of the kids have moved into it, looks really upstart and fun. So, with the bad, there is a little bit of good, but the Jets' top power play is really greedy for minutes. They'll eat about 1.5 minutes of a 2-minute power play usually. So, it's frustrating. But actually, for somebody who's on Team Tank, I'm not too mad that the offense is maybe not scoring as much.
Are there some young players on this team right now that are giving you hope for the future?
Yeah, I think if people are hoping for like really big needle movers, we don't have that so much. But we do have some really great young players. Elias Salomonson, who unfortunately looks to be dealing with a concussion right now. He's been, well, the Jets said they had zero plan to play him this year, which is really embarrassing to admit in a public forum because he became our third best defenseman on the team. And he's had, 30 or 40 games. So he's been fantastic. He looks like a surefire top 4, maybe even top pairing guy alongside Morrissey. We'll see. He's been good. I'd say Brad Lambert has really taken a step forward as well. He's forechecking more aggressively, finishing checks. And I feel like some of the scatterbrain decision-making that we saw when he tried to do too much, he's tamped down some of that. There are still moments where I think he does treat it like it's NHL 26, but otherwise it's just a skill thing. He'll get there. But I see a lot of really bright sparks with his game, so that's been great. Otherwise, though, we don't really have that many youth in the lineup. Rosean's probably one of the other guys. He's been decent. Danny Zhilkin, who was another player who kind of looked like he was on the outs of the Jets org. He had a really bounce-back camp and came into the Moose season this year looking like he's been firing on all cylinders. He's played a couple of games, scored his first NHL point the other night off of a Roseanne goal of all things. But, it's just... I can get excited about depth players and really solid top 4 guys, but I think it's hard to look at this group and say those dudes are going to move the needle for the team. The Jets are still going to have to make some acquisitions, and that's probably what I'm a little afraid of.
You mentioned the possibility, or at least the question about Connor Hellebuck's future with the team. What's the situation like, and how do you see it playing out?
So right now, there's nothing happening. He's under contract for forever at this point. But he is 33. He was on a podcast recently talking about how much he loves the Tkachuk's leadership. And, having tasted Olympic gold and not really seeing the Jets build a contender this year after they won the Presidents last year, you do start to wonder internally, what is his thought process? This team is on the wrong side of 30 for the most part. They signed Jonathan Taves thinking he was going to be the second line center answer. And I'm like, the guy hasn't played in 2 freaking years and had long COVID. What kind of planning is Winnipeg's front office doing? And the fact that we're seeing, guys like Murat Atesh from The Athletic put out articles basically saying, Winnipeg's not really giving off the vibes that they see the problem. Hellebuck is not stupid. He'll see that stuff. All the players will see that. I think Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele are very cushy. They get top-line deployments. The team caters to them. They don't care. Hellebuck, though, I think would have a different assessment of things. So I don't know if anything happens this summer. I highly doubt it. But, I usually am in the nothing ever happens camp. This feels like it could be different in about 2 years. So it seems a little distant, but in relative terms, it's very short term. We'll see. If a big vacancy opens on a team like, say, Florida or one of these top contenders, I think those conversations and rumors start to percolate.
What does it take for this team to make the playoffs?
Well, first they're going to have to win out, which, not happening. I don't know. I think you just have to think the rest of the West continues to stumble butt backwards out of the race. I mean, nobody wants wild card 2 because everyone knows you get a first round date with Colorado. And people are like, well, the Jets won 2 out of their last 3 matchups. And I'm like, yeah, the Jets also beat Colorado like 6-2 at the end of the season one year with Bones, and then proceeded to get absolutely pasted in 5 games in an actual playoff series. Nobody wants that again. But True North will say, we need the 2 home games of playoff revenue, otherwise we're screwed. And I'm like, buddy, you might be losing a lot more if this team's not competitive in the long term. So I say to that, good luck. If the Jets squeak in, it's going to be really bad. So, yeah, all I can say is I would not be looking forward to that.
All right. Well, Harrison, I know you'll have your pulse on your finger on the pulse of the Jets every step of the way, win or lose. Why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
You can join our daily event sessions at LO_Winnipeg Jets and Locked On Winnipeg Jets on Twitter and YouTube. We'll have daily episodes, same as Locked On Islanders and all the great shows. So be sure to check us out and commiserate with us as we wrap up, thankfully, the end of the season.
All right. Thank you so much, Harrison. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment. Getting tickets, though, that part hasn't always been so simple. That's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. I love that you see the all-in price up front. There are no surprise fees at checkout. And the view from your seat is one of my favorite features. You get a panoramic view from your seat before you purchase the tickets, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And zone deals really stand out. You choose the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. That's code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today, and remember, it's gametime.co, not gametime.com.